Just hours after a ceasefire was announced, massive airstrikes hit Beirut. Reports say hundreds are dead, entire areas shaken, and the situation is rapidly escalating again. So the big question is, if there's a ceasefire, why is the war still expanding? Earlier, Donald Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire agreement with Iran. On the surface, it looked like a major step toward de-escalation. For a moment, it seemed like the conflict might slow down. But that moment didn't last. Because almost immediately after the announcement, large-scale airstrikes began across Lebanon. Multiple locations were targeted, including areas near Beirut, the Bekaa Valley, and southern regions of the country. Dozens of fighter jets were reportedly involved, hitting a wide range of targets in a very short period of time. This was not a small or isolated operation. It was fast, coordinated, and intense. In just minutes, over 100 targets were reportedly struck. The scale of the attack suggests a significant escalation rather than a de-escalation. And the impact on the ground has been severe. Residential areas have been damaged, emergency services overwhelmed, and hospitals pushed to their limits. Casualty numbers continue to rise, with hundreds reported killed and many more injured. For civilians living in these, the ceasefire brought no relief. For them, the war did not pause. So why did this happen right after a ceasefire? The key detail is that the agreement was limited. It involved the United States and Iran, but it did not include all actors involved in the wider conflict. Lebanon and groups operating within it were not part of that deal. That means military operations in those areas could continue. In other words, the ceasefire exists, but only within a specific scope. And outside that scope, the conflict is still very active. This is where the situation becomes more dangerous. What began as a confrontation between the United States and Iran is now clearly involving multiple fronts. Different regions, different groups, and different objectives are all overlapping at the same time. And when a conflict spreads like this, it becomes harder to control. Following the strikes, tensions rose immediately. Hezbollah signaled resistance, rockets were launched, and warnings were issued across the region. At the same time, Iran condemned the attacks and linked them to the broader conflict, increasing pressure on all sides. This creates a chain reaction. One strike leads to a response. That response leads to another escalation. And each step makes the situation more unstable. Beyond the immediate violence, there are also global implications. One of the most critical points remains the Strait of Hormuz, a key route for global oil supply. Any instability in the region increases the risk of disruption, which can affect markets, energy prices, and economies worldwide. So even though the conflict is happening in specific locations, its impact is global. What we are seeing right now is a contradiction. On one hand, there is a ceasefire agreement. On the other, there are ongoing strikes and rising tensions. That contradiction is what makes this moment so important. Because it raises a deeper question: are we witnessing the beginning of de-escalation, or the early stage of a wider conflict? At this point, both possibilities remain open. The next few days will be critical. If the ceasefire holds and expands to include more parties, tensions could begin to ease. But if strikes continue and more groups get involved, the situation could escalate further. For now, the war has not ended. It has shifted. And as it shifts, new areas are being pulled into the conflict, making the situation more complex and unpredictable. This is News Insights. Subscribe for the latest updates on global events.